People who've been Oompa Loompas understand them like they should. So today, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Oompa Loompas and more. Are you ready? They're going? Alright. So, first of all, we have to establish something because there are many versions of the Oompa Loompa story. Started with the doll book. Who's read the book? No one? No one's read the book? No one? Wow. Usually there's a couple of kids who read the book. The Charlie and the Chocolate Factory book, which was then made into a movie in the 70s starring Gene Wilder. The videos that you just saw up there. Who's seen that movie? Oh, lovely, lovely. And then who has seen the Johnny Depp version made just a few years ago? All right. So it's very important that we establish which version we talk about because they're a little different here and there. In the what I'm going to be is I'm going to tell you about the Oompa Loompas from the Gene Wilder movie, the Oompa Loompas that you just saw. Okay. So you'll notice they had green hair, right? They had green hair. Did you know that only half of the Oompa Loompas have green hair? You knew that? What color are the other?
Black.
Black, that's right. As my daughter calls them, the rare black-haired Oompa Loompa. The reason you don't see them is they're very shy. They don't come out very much, but they're there. And so, in Oompa Loompa society, it's almost like a racial thing. It's the very distinct differences between the green-haired ones and the black-haired ones. So, just to know that. The other thing that you got to know is, do you know why they lived with Willy Wonka? And so it's for Cocoa Highs, because that's the Johnny Depp version. No one knows? Why did they leave Loompa Land?
They were being eaten?
Exactly. They were being eaten by vermicious canids. Yeah, vermicious canids. Hornwangles, schnoz goblins. All sorts of terrible things were eating them. And so they went to Willy Wonka's factory to work and be happy and to be safe. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about Loompa Land, which is where they came from. And we're going to understand everything that there is to know about Loompa Land, where they came from before they moved and lived with Willy Wonka. So, first of all, you got to know that everything in this land was owned by the same guy. His name was Paul. And so he owned all of the apartments and the houses and all that stuff. But it was too much to manage on his own, so he had a guy named Hund manage his apartments for him. And so that's how it worked. And so they built these apartment complexes. And a couple of things to know about schnoz goblins and vermicious canids. They cannot climb and they cannot fly. So, it's much safer to live up high. So because of that, the architecture of the buildings that they built were very different from what you might expect. There's sort of more rooms up high and not as many rooms down low. And so the first floor only had one room in it. And they call it the special. They call it the special. Now, when you order the meatloaf because it's on special, it's usually not because it's the most awesome meatloaf in the history of time, right? Special usually means cheap and crappy, right? Cheap and crappy. It's not just cheap and crappy room, it's special. Alright? So, as you go up higher though, you put more rooms. And so, on the second floor, they have a special, but there are also other kinds of rooms on the second floor. They call these plush. Plush, plush, plush. Now a plush is a little nicer than a special, but it's not super nice. It's what you and I would kind of think of as basic housing. Something that, it has electricity, it has plumbing. I didn't tell you much about the specials, but the specials have dirt floor. They're really crappy. Okay, you would not like to live in the special. So the plushes are a little nicer. They kind of have your basic amenities. They might have carpeting even. They're really, it's kind of basic stuff. And the plushes are more expensive. And so we all think, okay, an Oompa Loompa is going to want to live up in a plush, not down in a special because, for obvious reasons, safety, personal safety. Stay away from the horn wangles. There's one of them I can't think of. I can't think of that one. Unfortunately, though, it's more complicated than that. That's not how it works. Oompa Loompas have this principle that they follow. It's like a religion to them, okay? It's very, very important, as we shall see. As we go through this, you're going to see that Oompa Loompas do some weird things because they follow the principle of Aufbau. Now, like I said, you got to kind of almost think of it as a religion to them. It's that important to them to follow this principle. It's a way of living. And their word for it is Aufbau. We don't have a good translation in our language, so the word that I could probably say that would help you the most to understand what it means is tightwad. Oompa Loompas are very cheap. Oompa Loompas will never spend a dime that they don't have to spend because you can think of it as like being wasteful or frugal or just making the most of what you have. But Oompa Loompas are tight with a buck. They will never spend any money that they don't have to spend, absolutely. So, given that the first floor, the special, is the cheapest room, every Oompa Loompa wants to live in a first floor special, even though it puts them at risk of being eaten. Okay. So, they open up this apartment complex, and by the way, there's higher floors as well. Let's go ahead, before we talk too much more about what they do, let's finish the apartment complex. The third floor, one of the things that they do is that they always kind of replicate the previous floor above, and then they add to it. So the third floor has a special. What else does it have? Has plushes, has 3 of them. Oops. Has 3 plushes. And the rooms get a little bigger as you go up as well. And there are also 5 deluxe rooms. So that's a deluxe, 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 deluxe. Special, 3 plushes, 5 deluxes. And now, the 4th floor, I don't know if you noticed this, but the rooms get bigger as you go up as well. That's part of the plan. They're special, 3 plushes, 5, did that twice. 5 deluxes. And if the pattern holds, what are they going to, how many of the other new kind of room is going to go up here? Anyone? Bueller. What? 7. There's 7 of whatever this is. 1, 2, so 7 of those. And those are, I didn't tell you about the deluxe, but you probably figure out the deluxe are nice. These are actually really pretty nice. They've got kind of some amenities. They have big bathrooms, they have nice kitchens, but the fancies are fancy. They're like the penthouse apartment of Oompa Loompa land. Okay, so if you have a fancy, then you get to you have full access to all of the clubs, the exercise gyms, and all that kind of stuff. You get the swimming pools, you get the spas, you get all this super nice stuff. You live in a fancy. All right, so they spent all this money. They built this whole apartment, got it all built up, and Oompa Loompas start moving in, and they had a problem. The problem was that you have all these different rooms, and where do all the Oompa Loompas want to live? They want to live in the first floor special. So they open this up, and guess how many Oompa Loompas moved into the first floor special?
All of them.
All of them. Exactly. You've been there, haven't you?
Sure.
Yes. All of the Oompa Loompas lived here because they are so drastically following the Aufbau principle that they will always, 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 always take the cheapest. And so so Hund and Paul, they have this idea, they have this problem. They're like, wow, what are we going to do about this? And so Hund comes up with an idea. He says, here's what we're going to do. What they were doing was, let's say this is a $50 room, and what they were doing is they were all sharing rent. So there's like 100 of them. The more you pack in there, the cheaper it gets, right? So they all move in there together, save $1. And so Paul said, well, we can get around that by making them pay for a room. Like you don't pay, like each Oompa Loompa pays whatever it costs to live there. So let's say it's $50 to live there, you pay $50. You get a roommate, they pay $50. You get another roommate, they pay $50. And every person, so that was Hund's rule. Hund's rule, you're gonna pay to stay. Okay, so pay by the Oompa Loompa, not the room. Pay by the Oompa Loompa, not the room. So it costs you just as much to live by yourself as with somebody. Okay? And Hund thought, oh, that's going to help because now if I have 10 Oompa Loompas here, they're not each going to pay $50 when they could just get their own room for $60, right? So so that was their idea. But you know what? It didn't work. It didn't work. You still had 100 Oompa Loompas each paying $50 to live with 100 Oompa Loompas instead of paying the extra $10. They're extreme. They're very, 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 very devoted to the Aufbau principle. So that Hund's rule didn't work. So Paul made a new rule, and he said, all right, forget about it. Only 2 to a room, period. Only 2 to a room. Because there's no other way around it. He thought about making an exception for families, if you have a family of 3, with that third person in there. But then Oompa Loompas started adopting one another so that they could technically have like these families of 400 people. And it's like, no. They are devoted to the Aufbau principle. And so they had to come up with these hard, strict rules. So only 2 to a room, and they still had to pay to stay. So let's kind of talk about this then. What's going to happen then is you open this place up, and the first Oompa Loompa comes in, and he's going to live where? Special. On the bottom. So you have the first floor, second floor, third floor, fourth floor, fifth floor, sixth floor. I didn't draw fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth floor, but you could. The pattern holds for those as well. And so let's start talking about what's going to happen. And for the sake of brevity, for the sake of making it easy to say quickly, let's give these labels. This is the first floor special, so how about we just say 1S and a 4D or a 6F or whatever. We can figure out what we're talking about. And so this would be 2S, and then that would be, those would all be 2P, 3S, 3P, 3Ds, etc. And so whenever I say things that way, that's what I mean. So the first one's going to live in 1S, and there he goes. Now I haven't told you another really important thing. This is one of the hardest things to explain about Oompa Loompa society because it's so different from us. You would almost think about it as a gender kind of thing, but you can't really talk about gender with Oompa Loompas because, as we all know, Oompa Loompas reproduce by spore asexually, right? So that's so you can't really think about it that way. It's one of those quirks of their society where green-haired Oompa Loompas only want to live with black-haired Oompa Loompas. They don't get along. It's almost like when 2 people are too similar, they don't get along, right? And so green-haired Oompa Loompas and black-haired Oompa Loompas, they get along really well. The green ones talk all the time and the black ones are quiet, so it works fine. And so the black-haired Oompa Loompas, A green-haired Oompa Loompa will never live with a green-haired Oompa Loompa, and a black-haired Oompa Loompa will never live with a black-haired Oompa Loompa. So, if I put a green-haired Oompa Loompa in, the one that has to live with him is going to have to be a black-haired Oompa Loompa. Okay? Easy enough. All right, now you know everything you need to know. Where's the next Oompa Loompa going to live? If this is their apartment complex, you're an Oompa Loompa, where are you going to live?
2S.
In the 2S. And then the next one comes in, and he's going to live where? Nope. He's going to live in the 2S, right? Because there's still a slot there. You can fit 2, just not more than 2. Where's the next one going to live?
3S.
That's a good question. Which is cheaper? Turns out that the second floor is always cheaper than the third floor, for now. We'll change that later, but on a next 2 or 3 days from now in a lecture we'll talk about how it all works. But for now we'll just say second floor is cheaper than third floor than fourth floor. So the next Oompa Loompa is going to live where?
2P.
It's going to live in 2P. Now the question is, are they going to live by themselves or are they going to pair up? Depends on what.
Hair color.
Okay, so let's say he's green, he's black hair. So he has a choice. He can live there or he can live by himself. Makes no difference.
With the second one.
Why is he going to live with him?
Because he's a tightwad.
He's a tightwad. Is he saving any money by living with him? He's not saving any money, right? So Oompa Loompas, if it's the same price, they're going to live in their own space, right? They care about price. But if the price is the same, they're not gonna pair up if they don't have to, right? So Hund's rule is still in play. So this Oompa Loompa